This morning we rise not by accident but by grace. Before the sun stretched its golden fingers across the sky, mercy had already spoken our names. We awaken today, January 19, a Monday, not merely to the ticking of time, but to the gift of breath, the quiet promise of provision, and a love that did not run out while we slept. To begin the day with thanks is to stand tall in humility. It is to say, I am here because God has been faithful. Gratitude steadies our feet before the road begins to twist. Prayer opens our hands so that daily bread may fall into them, not always in abundance, but always enough. Today we gather our words like seeds and plant them in hope. We pray not because we have everything, but because we trust the one who provides all things, and we move forward wrapped in endless mercy, knowing that every new morning is proof that God is not finished with us yet. Morning does not ask our permission to arrive. It steps into our lives quietly, carrying light on its shoulders, whether our hearts are ready or not. And yet how we meet that morning, how we answer its knock, determines the shape of the hours that follow. To begin the day with thanks is to meet life standing up straight, eyes open, spirit awake. Gratitude is not a polite gesture reserved for moments of comfort. It is a declaration of faith spoken before the evidence appears. When we open our eyes and say thank you, we are not ignoring the weight of yesterday or pretending that pain has loosened its grip. We are choosing to acknowledge that, despite everything, we are still here. Breath still moves in and out of our bodies like a quiet hymn. The heart continues its faithful labor. Somewhere light is breaking through darkness, even if we cannot yet see where it will land. Gratitude teaches us to recognize survival as a miracle and existence as an undeserved gift. There is a power in thanksgiving that steadies the trembling soul. It reminds us that life is not only made of what we lack, but also of what we have been carried through. When we begin the day with thanks, we anchor ourselves in truth that we have been sustained by hands greater than our own. Gratitude becomes the ground beneath our feet when circumstances threaten to knock us off balance. It whispers, you are still held. Gratitude is not loud, it does not rush. It arrives gently, like dawn spreading across the sky without announcement. It teaches patience in a world that demands speed and teaches reverence in a culture addicted to noise. To give thanks in the morning is to slow the mind enough to notice grace at work in ordinary things. The warmth of a cup of tea, the sound of birds negotiating the day, the quiet assurance that mercy has outpaced judgment once again. When we begin with gratitude, we resist the temptation to let fear write the first sentence of our story. Fear says, what if today breaks you? Gratitude replies, what if today blesses you in ways you cannot yet imagine? Gratitude does not deny hardship, but it refuses to let hardship have the final word. It says that even in struggle there is meaning, and even in uncertainty there is hope pressing forward. Thankfulness humbles us. It reminds us that we are not self-made, not self-sustained, not self-sufficient. Every breath is borrowed. Every opportunity is granted. Every morning is a continuation of grace, not a guarantee owed to us. When we begin the day with thanks, pride loosens its grip, and humility steps in, not as weakness, but as wisdom. We learn to walk softly, aware that we are recipients before we are achievers. Gratitude also sharpens our vision. It trains the eyes to see abundance where the mind once saw lack. The thankful heart recognizes that provision does not always come wrapped in excess. Sometimes it arrives as just enough strength to endure, just enough courage to speak, just enough peace to rest. Gratitude teaches us to call that enough a blessing, not a disappointment. There is a quiet courage in beginning the day with thanks, especially when the day ahead looks heavy. It takes bravery to say thank you when answers are delayed, when doors remain closed, when prayers feel unanswered. But gratitude in those moments becomes an act of trust. It says, I may not understand the path, but I believe the guide knows the way. It is faith made visible through words spoken before certainty arrives. Gratitude shapes our interactions with others. A thankful heart moves through the world gently recognizing shared humanity. When we begin the day with thanks, we are less likely to harden ourselves against others, less likely to meet the world with clenched fists. Gratitude opens the hands. It invites kindness. It allows us to see people not as obstacles, but as companions walking their own difficult roads. To start the day with thanks is also to reclaim our agency. The world will offer us many reasons to complain before noon. Gratitude chooses a different posture. It says, I will decide how I enter this day. It refuses to surrender the morning to bitterness or resentment. Gratitude becomes a quiet rebellion against despair, a way of saying that joy is not dependent on circumstances but rooted in perspective. Thanksgiving aligns the soul with purpose. When we pause to give thanks, we remember why we are here, not merely to survive the day but to live it meaningfully. Gratitude reminds us that our lives are part of a larger story, woven with intention and care. It encourages us to move through the day not as wanderers but as participants in something sacred. Gratitude also has a way of healing what it touches. It softens old wounds, not by erasing them but by reframing them. When we begin the day with thanks, we acknowledge that even our scars tell stories of endurance. They are evidence that we were wounded, yes, but also that we were not defeated. Gratitude honors the journey, including the difficult miles that taught us how to keep going. In giving thanks each morning, we practice hope. We say to the future, I am ready to meet you with an open heart. We say to the present, you are enough for now. And we say to the past, you did not break me. Gratitude stitches these moments together, creating a fabric strong enough to carry us through the day. Beginning the day with thanks does not guarantee ease, but it does promise grounding. It roots us in awareness, steadies our steps, and reminds us that we are surrounded by mercy we did not earn. Gratitude becomes the first prayer, the first act of courage, the first step toward peace. And when night returns and the day has spoken all it intends to say, gratitude will still be there, waiting to gather the lessons, the blessings, and the grace that carried us through. Prayer is the quiet place where the soul goes to breathe. It is not bound by walls or hours or perfected words. It is the space we enter when the noise of the world grows too loud and the weight of living presses heavy on the chest. Prayer is not an escape from life. It is a way of standing firmly within it, rooted, aware, and unafraid. Each day, before the demands call our names and expectations stretch their arms toward us, prayer offers itself as a lifeline, steady, faithful, and always within reach. To pray at the beginning of the day is to acknowledge that we do not walk alone. It is an admission, spoken or unspoken, that our strength has limits, but God's mercy does not. Prayer is not reserved for moments of desperation, though it holds us tenderly there. It is also for moments of clarity, for gratitude rising naturally, for hope daring to speak before fear takes the floor. Prayer becomes the bridge between what we know and what we trust. In prayer, we lay down the illusion of control. The world teaches us to clench our fists, to manage every outcome, to believe that worth is measured by productivity and power. Prayer gently loosens those fists. It reminds us that surrender is not defeat, but wisdom. When we pray, we place our plans, our worries, our unfinished questions into hands greater than our own. We say, guide me, not because we are weak, but because we are wise enough to know we need guidance. Prayer speaks in many languages. Sometimes it is spoken aloud, steady and confident. Sometimes it trembles, barely able to form words. Sometimes it arrives as silence, heavy with longing. God hears them all. Prayer is not graded on eloquence. It is received through sincerity. A whispered plea carries as much weight as a polished sermon. A tear falling in the dark can be as powerful as a song rising in light. As a daily lifeline, prayer anchors us before the currents of the day attempt to pull us under. It reminds us who we are before the world tells us who we should be. In prayer, we remember that our value is not determined by success or applause, nor diminished by failure or rejection. We stand before God as we are, unfinished, hopeful, flawed, and deeply loved. That knowledge steadies the spine and strengthens the heart. Prayer also teaches us to listen Too often we approach life as if our voices are the only ones that matter. Prayer invites stillness. It creates room for divine wisdom to surface, sometimes gently, sometimes uncomfortably. In listening, we learn that answers do not always come wrapped in certainty. Sometimes they arrive as peace instead of explanation, direction instead of detail, assurance instead of immediate change. There is courage in daily prayer. It takes bravery to be honest with God about fear, anger, disappointment, and doubt. Prayer does not require us to pretend. It welcomes truth in all its rawness. When we bring our whole selves into prayer, we allow healing to begin, not because circumstances instantly shift, but because we are no longer carrying the burden alone. Prayer shapes our posture toward the day. When we pray, we step into the world differently. We move with intention instead of impulse. We speak with compassion instead of reaction. Prayer softens sharp edges and sharpens moral clarity. It reminds us that every interaction carries weight, that kindness is never wasted, and that love is an active choice, renewed moment by moment. A daily prayer life also cultivates resilience. When challenges arise, as they surely will, prayer becomes the place we return to again and again. It teaches endurance without bitterness and hope without denial. Prayer whispers, "This moment will not have the final word." It steadies us when answers are delayed and strengthens us when outcomes differ from our expectations. Prayer is where gratitude and trust meet. It is where we give thanks for what has been provided and ask for what is still needed. It is where we learn to say, "Give us this day," understanding that tomorrow will take care of itself. Prayer keeps us present, focused on today's grace rather than tomorrow's anxiety. In prayer, we also learn mercy, first by receiving it, then by extending it. When we stand before a God who forgives, restores, and renews daily, it becomes harder to withhold grace from others. Prayer reshapes the heart, making room for empathy where judgment once lived. It reminds us that everyone we encounter is fighting battles we may never see. Prayer is not passive. It does not excuse inaction or replace responsibility. Instead, it fuels purposeful living. It gives direction to effort and meaning to work. When prayer guides our steps, our actions align more closely with love, justice, and humility. We become participants in grace, not merely observers of it. As the day unfolds, prayer does not end with the morning. It continues in small moments. A quiet thank you, a whispered plea, a breath taken before responding. Prayer weaves itself through the hours, reminding us that God is not distant, not distracted, not disengaged. The divine presence walks with us through meetings and meals, through laughter and loss. By returning to prayer daily, we train the soul to recognize God's nearness. We begin to notice answered prayers we once overlooked, strength we did not know we had, doors that closed for our protection, peace that arrived unexpectedly. Prayer sharpens awareness and deepens trust. In a world that celebrates self-sufficiency, prayer dares to say that dependence on God is not weakness but freedom. It frees us from carrying what was never meant for us alone. It allows us to begin each day grounded, guided, and held. Prayer as a daily lifeline does not promise ease, but it promises presence. And sometimes presence is the miracle we need most. Provision is often mistaken for abundance alone, for overflowing tables and open doors and prayers answered exactly as imagined. But God's daily provision moves with a quieter authority. It arrives not always as excess but as sufficiency. It comes dressed in wisdom when confusion threatens, wrapped in strength when the body feels weak, carried in peace when the world insists on unrest. God's provision is not loud, yet it is constant, faithful as the sunrise that does not boast but never fails to appear. Each day we are given what we need for that day, and rarely more than that. There is purpose in this divine economy. God does not overwhelm us with tomorrow's burdens or yesterday's regrets. Instead, provision meets us in the present moment, reminding us that now is where grace lives. Today's strength is for today's journey. Tomorrow will bring its own mercy, waiting patiently for our arrival. God's provision teaches us trust before it teaches us comfort. It asks us to believe that what we receive is enough even when it does not look like what we expected. We learn, sometimes slowly and sometimes painfully, that provision is not always the removal of struggle but the presence of help within it. It is the unseen hand steadying us as we cross uncertain ground. There are days when provision looks like opportunity, doors opening just as we feared they would remain closed. And there are days when provision looks like restraint, a door staying shut because walking through it would have cost us more than we could afford to lose. God provides protection as faithfully as God provides progress, though we often only recognize one as a blessing. Daily provision reminds us that God is attentive, not distant, not preoccupied, not indifferent to the small details of our lives. God notices the sparrow, and also notices the quiet ache we do not speak aloud. The provision of God is personal. It reaches us where we are, not where we pretend to be. It meets us in our limitations and works within them, not against them. We are sustained by things we did not manufacture. Breath enters our lungs without our permission and leaves without our command. The heart continues its rhythm even while we sleep. These are not accidents, they are provisions. Life itself is a daily gift, renewed moment by moment. We are living on grace so consistent that we mistake it for entitlement. God's provision also comes through people, through hands that offer help, voices that speak encouragement, and shoulders that carry weight when ours grow tired. We are reminded that provision is not always solitary. God often answers prayers by sending community, and in receiving help we learn humility. In giving help we learn purpose. Sometimes provision arrives disguised as delay. We ask for speed, but God gives patience. We ask for clarity, but God gives endurance. These gifts do not always feel generous in the moment, yet they shape us in ways abundance never could. God provides not just what sustains us, but what grows us. Daily provision teaches us restraint in a world of excess. It invites us to resist the hunger for more and learn gratitude for enough. When we recognize that God has provided for today, we stop borrowing worry from tomorrow. Anxiety loosens its grip when trust takes its place. We learn to rest not because everything is finished, but because God is faithful. There is also provision and correction, in being redirected, in being told no when yes would have led us astray. God's provision guards our character as much as our comfort. It shapes who we are becoming, not just what we are accumulating. The God who provides daily is invested not only in our survival but in our integrity. We often overlook provision because it does not always arrive dramatically. It comes quietly: strength to get out of bed, courage to make a difficult call, wisdom to remain silent when speaking would cause harm. These are sacred gifts. They are answers to prayers we may not have known how to articulate. God's daily provision also teaches dependence without shame. We are not meant to be self-sustaining islands. We are designed to lean, to trust, to receive. When we acknowledge our need, we make room for grace. Pride closes the door to provision, but humility opens it wide. There are seasons when provision feels thin, when resources stretch and hope feels fragile. Even then, God remains faithful. Provision in those moments may look like perseverance itself, the ability to keep going when stopping would be easier. It may look like hope that refuses to die even when circumstances try to starve it out. God's provision is not random. It is intentional, timely, and sufficient. It arrives when we need it, not always when we want it. It teaches us patience and deepens our faith. Over time, we begin to recognize a pattern: we have been carried more than we have walked alone. Daily provision invites remembrance. When we look back, we see how needs were met in ways we could not have planned. We remember moments when help appeared at just the right time, when strength surfaced just as we were ready to surrender. These memories become testimonies, anchoring our faith for future uncertainty. God provides not just for the body, but for the soul. Joy that flickers in unexpected places, peace that settles without explanation, purpose that rises even in routine. These are provisions too, essential for living fully, not merely surviving. As we learn to trust God's daily provision, we learn to live with open hands instead of clenched fists. We stop hoarding and start sharing. We stop fearing lack and start recognizing abundance in unexpected forms. We realize that provision multiplies when gratitude leads the way. God's provision is endless not because it overflows all at once, but because it renews itself every morning. Like manna falling daily, it invites us to return again and again, trusting that what we need will be there. And it always is. In this truth, we find rest. We are not alone in our striving. We are not abandoned in our waiting. The God who provides daily is still at work, quietly, faithfully, lovingly, ensuring that nothing essential is ever missing. Morning arrives carrying mercy the way the ocean carries waves, without effort, without exhaustion, without apology. Before we gather our thoughts, before regret clears its throat, before memory begins its long recitation of where we failed, mercy is already present. It does not ask us to earn its place. It simply arrives, faithful as light. Endless mercy is not a concept meant for distant theology. It is a living, breathing truth that meets us at the edge of every new morning. Mercy understands our human condition. It knows how easily we stumble, how often we fall short of our own expectations, let alone divine ones. And still mercy chooses us. Each morning it says, "You may begin again," not because yesterday did not matter, but because it did not have the power to end the story. Mercy does not erase the past. It redeems the present by refusing to let the past rule it. There is freedom in knowing that mercy is renewed daily. It loosens the chains of shame that tell us we are defined by our worst moments. Shame says, "You are what you did." Mercy replies, "You are more than what you've done." It gives us permission to lift our heads, straighten our backs, and step forward without dragging yesterday behind us like a shadow that refuses to fade. Endless mercy teaches us that God is not exhausted by our repetition. The same fears, the same struggles, the same confessions, we bring them again and again, and mercy does not grow weary. It listens without impatience. It restores without resentment. This constancy is not indulgence. It is love disciplined by compassion. Each morning mercy meets us where we are, not where we pretend to be. It does not require polished prayers or perfected faith. It welcomes trembling belief and honest doubt. Mercy is wide enough to hold our questions and strong enough to carry our failures. It does not flinch at brokenness. It leans in. Mercy also carries instruction. It teaches us that we are not condemned to repeat yesterday forever. It shows us that change is possible, not because we suddenly become flawless, but because grace makes growth attainable. Every morning, mercy hands us a clean page and says, "Write differently today." There are mornings when mercy feels like relief, a quiet release from guilt that pressed heavy through the night. And there are mornings when mercy feels like challenge, urging us to forgive, to apologize, to let go of bitterness we have been nursing too long. Mercy does not always comfort. Sometimes it calls us higher, but even then it walks with us as we rise. Endless mercy is patient with our becoming. It understands that healing is not linear and transformation is rarely immediate. Mercy does not demand instant perfection. It celebrates small victories, a kinder word spoken, a harmful habit resisted, a courageous truth acknowledged. It honors progress, however slow. Mercy also reshapes our view of God. It tells us we are not dealing with a distant judge tallying failures, but with a loving presence invested in restoration. Mercy reveals a God who is moved by compassion, who sees our effort even when results fall short, who remembers that we are human. As we receive mercy each morning, we are invited to extend it outward. Endless mercy is not meant to end with us. It flows through us, teaching us to see others with softer eyes. When we recognize how often we are forgiven, we become more willing to forgive. When we remember how patiently we are met, we grow more patient with others' imperfections. Mercy changes how we carry memory. It does not demand that we forget what we have learned, but it refuses to let memory become a weapon against hope. It teaches us to remember without being imprisoned, to reflect without reliving, to acknowledge without condemning. There are mornings when mercy is all we have, when strength feels thin, when joy is distant, when faith flickers like a fragile flame. Even then, mercy remains. It does not withdraw because we are tired or uncertain. It stays steady and sufficient, whispering, "You are not alone in this." Endless mercy also gives us courage to face the day honestly. We do not have to pretend strength we do not possess. Mercy allows vulnerability without fear of rejection. It tells us that weakness is not a disqualification, but an invitation for grace to do its work. Morning mercy teaches us to live in rhythm rather than regret, to accept that each day carries its own grace, its own calling, its own opportunity to choose love again. It frees us from the crushing belief that we must make up for yesterday before we are allowed to live today. Mercy is not blind to justice. It does not excuse harm or ignore accountability. Instead, it offers a path forward, one where responsibility and compassion walk side by side. Mercy says, "Own what you have done, but do not believe it is all you are." Every morning, mercy reminds us that survival itself is evidence of grace, that waking up is not a guarantee but a gift, that the continuation of our story is not accidental. We are here because mercy said, "Not yet finished." As the day unfolds, mercy travels with us. It meets us in moments of impatience, in words spoken too quickly, in thoughts we wish we could take back. And when we stumble again, mercy does not retreat. It waits, ready to restore, ready to remind us that failure is not final. Endless mercy every morning is God's way of saying that hope is always current, never expired, that redemption is not seasonal but constant, that no matter how heavy the night, morning arrives carrying forgiveness in its hands. And so we rise, not perfect, not complete, but forgiven, renewed, and invited once more into the work of becoming. Monday often arrives carrying a reputation heavier than it deserves. It is blamed for fatigue, for unfinished dreams, for the long distance between who we are and who we hope to become. But Monday is not the enemy. It is a threshold, a beginning dressed in ordinary clothes, waiting for meaning to be assigned. When we call Monday sacred, we are not romanticizing routine. We are recognizing possibility hiding in plain sight. A sacred beginning does not require ceremony. It requires awareness. Monday enters quietly without applause, asking only to be received. It does not promise ease, but it offers opportunity, the chance to start again with lessons learned and hope intact. To see Monday as sacred is to understand that holiness is not confined to special days, but woven into every moment we are given breath. Monday reminds us that beginnings do not need perfection. They need willingness. The sacred does not demand that we arrive rested, confident, or fully prepared. It meets us as we are, tired eyes, heavy thoughts, cautious optimism, and says, "This is enough to begin." There is grace in that permission. When we treat Monday as sacred, we resist the urge to rush through it merely to reach something better. We stop waiting for Friday to feel alive. We honor the present moment, understanding that purpose does not wait for ideal conditions. Monday becomes holy ground not because it is extraordinary, but because God is present in it. A sacred Monday teaches us discipline without despair. It reminds us that faith is not only practiced in moments of inspiration, but in consistency, in showing up, in doing the work before the reward appears. Monday is the day that asks, "Will you be faithful when enthusiasm fades?" And in answering yes, we discover a deeper strength. Monday carries the weight of responsibility. Tasks line up, expectations knock, and time feels suddenly scarce. But when we see Monday as sacred, responsibility transforms into stewardship. Work becomes an offering. Effort becomes prayer. Even the smallest task gains dignity when it is done with intention and gratitude. There is courage required to begin again, especially after disappointment. Monday does not ignore what did not work last week. It simply refuses to let it define what is possible now. A sacred Monday says, you may try again. Not because failure didn't hurt, but because hope still has something to say. Monday teaches us humility. It reminds us that progress is built day by day, not in grand leaps. It invites patience in a culture addicted to immediacy. Sacred beginnings understand that growth is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. Seeds are planted long before harvest is celebrated. When Monday is honored, routine becomes revelation. We begin to notice grace in repetition, the steady rhythm of effort, rest, and renewal. We realize that God works not only in miracles but in momentum, not only in sudden breakthroughs but in daily faithfulness. A sacred Monday also reshapes how we view time. It tells us that time is not something to be survived but something to be stewarded. Each hour is a gift, not a burden. Each moment holds potential for kindness, learning, and connection. Monday invites us to use time wisely, but gently. Monday, as a sacred beginning, calls us to intention. Before the noise of the week grows loud, it asks us to set our hearts. What will we carry into these days? Fear or faith? Resentment or forgiveness? Exhaustion or expectation? Monday does not force an answer, but it does ask the question. There is something holy about choosing hope at the start of the week, about deciding, despite uncertainty, to believe that good can still unfold. Monday does not guarantee success, but it offers opportunity, and opportunity, when met with courage, can become transformation. A sacred Monday also invites alignment. It asks us to consider whether our actions reflect our values, whether our pace reflects our priorities. It gives us a chance to adjust, to slow down, to refocus, to remember what truly matters before the week gains momentum. Monday teaches us resilience. It is the day we return to effort after rest, to discipline after pause. It reminds us that endurance is built in ordinary moments, not dramatic ones. Sacred beginnings strengthen us quietly, preparing us for challenges we cannot yet see. When we see Monday as sacred, we stop resenting it for what it demands and start appreciating it for what it offers. Structure, direction, a chance to engage life with purpose rather than drift through it. Monday gives shape to our intentions and direction to our energy. There is mercy in Monday too. It does not require us to fix everything at once. It only asks us to begin. One step, one choice, one moment of faithfulness. Sacred beginnings honor small starts, knowing they often lead to significant change. Monday also connects us to community. As we begin again, so do others, each carrying their own hopes and burdens. Seeing Monday as sacred softens our interactions. It reminds us that everyone is beginning something, and kindness becomes a shared language. A sacred Monday invites us to release what no longer serves us. Old habits, lingering bitterness, self-doubt that whispers too loudly. Monday gives us permission to set those things down and choose differently, not perfectly, but intentionally. There is beauty in a beginning that does not announce itself. Monday does not arrive with celebration, but with quiet resolve. And in that quiet, something profound happens. We realize that sacredness is not about spectacle, but about presence. Monday as a sacred beginning teaches us to trust the process, to believe that showing up matters even when results are not immediate. It tells us that faithfulness today prepares us for fruit tomorrow. As the week unfolds, Monday becomes the foundation upon which everything else rests. When it is approached with reverence, the days that follow are steadier, more grounded. Sacred beginnings shape sacred journeys. So we rise on Monday, not reluctantly, but intentionally. We step into the week, not as victims of time, but as participants in grace. We begin again, trusting that this ordinary day carries extraordinary possibility. And in doing so, we discover that Monday too has been holy all along.